Many thanks for being part of our 13th Foundation Day event and deliberations. Today's day-long event will present 6 dedicated panel discussions touching upon various stakeholders from international bodies, government, corporate, and media houses. Throughout the day, we'll deliberate upon the ways and means to further this movement of building a disability inclusive and sustainable world. 13 years back, Sarthak was started with just one center in the heart of India, Delhi. And I take pleasure in sharing that in the last 13 years, Sarthak have trained and placed more than 20,000 persons with disabilities across 15 states of India. And all these have been made possible because of the vision of our founder and CEO, Dr. Jitendra Agarwal, and guidance and support of our mentor and guru, Padma Bhushan, Dr. M.B. Atreya, NAAI President, Shri Krishan Kalra, Sarthak National State Advisory Board members, 1,000 plus hiring partners and 50 plus funding partners and many other well-wishers. I once again thank everyone for your support and guidance on the behalf of entire Sarthak family. Now I would request Anuradha Bhavnani ma'am, our National Advisory member, to take this session ahead. Anuradha ma'am has more than 3 decades of experience with large corporations and social enterprises, startups across range of sectors. She has worked at the Shell Foundation with social enterprises, not-for-profits, incubators, accelerators, DFIs, multilateral and governments, and supported and co-created early-stage pioneering social enterprises and led non-executive board roles with not-for-profits and for-profits as well. Over to you, Anuradha ma'am.
Thank you, thank you, Nishta. And I think that was a wonderful start to a lovely packed morning. I think we have a day which is going to empower each one of us listening and each one of us participating. A day created through this webinar, which will, I am sure, transform something in the sector for us by the end of the day. So thank you very much, Nishta. I'd like to start the day with actually congratulating the entire Sarthak team and everybody who's touched the lives of Sarthak. 13 years is actually a tricky age, right? So all of you who have children will tell you that as you get into your teens, you get to be a little difficult. So I think it's going to be next 10 years for Sarthak will be difficult, not from any other perspective, but I think growing rapidly and fast and accelerated growth. So it's time to celebrate. It's time to celebrate and congratulate every person around this room, as well as those who are not here but have been a part of this journey for Sarthak, to thank them for getting us where we are. But the journey doesn't end here, it's just the beginning. And today's day, I think, will set another tone for the Sarthak team and its journey. So I have always seen Sarthak actually not just as a player that has worked in the space of disability, but as an organization that has truly created an ecosystem. It has created an ecosystem by educating people like us and bringing us more closer to this space, as well as bringing in those that have the disabilities or have special needs to be able to find empowerment. So Sarthak has been an organization where the word empowerment is very deeply embedded in its DNA. And over these years, it has empowered, like Nishta said, people across 15 states, and not just empowered and created jobs for 20,000 people, but actually empowered their families, because each individual who finds a skill and then finds good livelihood creation actually creates a whole ecosystem of enablement for his family. And one of the things that Sarthak is built over years now is not just impacting special ability in one particular sector, but actually looking at the whole chain, right from early intervention for young children, all the way up to skills, education, and job creation. And this whole chain, as I would say, a value chain from a very young age to whatever age you are, you can be a part of the Sarthak journey and feel empowered with the effort that they are creating. I don't think it would be fair to move on to anything in the day without making a mention of the effort Sarthak is putting in over the last 2 years for the GRC. This is one such pioneering and world-class facility that Sarthak is working on and creating. GRC stands for Global Resource Center. This resource center is being set up as a center of excellence for skill building, for employment, for early intervention, for inclusive education, for technology and innovation, for international partnerships and collaboration. So clearly, it's going to be a place where it's going to be, according to me, a one-stop shop, really, a one-stop place where anybody who would like to contribute or play a role or be a part of the space of special abilities, this is the place to go to. And to make this happen, each one in the team and each one in the leadership is currently working hard to support. So I'd like to reach out to those of you who are new to this and those of you who have heard of it but don't know enough to actually participate, contribute, and make this vision of Sarthak a reality. Because this, I think, and I believe very clearly, in a few years from now, will be truly a world-class facility where we will have international exchange happening with people from around the world. So this is definitely something that we're all extremely excited about and looking forward to. I don't think it would be worth moving on to, again, something else in the day without saying thank you to everybody who has been a part of this 13-year journey, the 50 funders, the thousands of volunteers and partners, the multiple gurus and advisors and mentors of Sarthak, and of course, each one at Sarthak, the team that has made this a reality. So Atul, I think it's time for you to take the lead and start off the first panel. But before I do that, I think Atul needs no introduction. I'm sure people around the room, around the table, around the panel know him very well. He has been doing some very amazing and purposeful work. In his last role as a CEO of NSDC, he made some very strategic catalytic changes and some great work there. Currently, he works as an advisor with multiple startups and not-for-profits across many sectors. And so we all look up to Atul to give us the next interesting catalyzing piece of wake up every morning that would allow us to really charge our own engines. So thank you, Atul, and look forward to this great panel discussion with some very illustrious people around the table.
Thank you for your kind introduction, Anuradha. Very nice of you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. It means a lot to us and to our Divyangjan folks. It is the 13th annual Foundation Day of Sarthak Educational Trust, and that is a cause of celebration. So the pandemic has disrupted normal life in the entire world. Media is full of stories on adversities being faced by all. Our Divyangjans also faced multiple hardships. We didn't get adequate coverage in the media. However, we're not here to talk about adversities. We are here to talk about converting adversities to opportunities. These are not my words. This is the message that Dr. Jitendra Agarwal, founder CEO of Sarthak, conveyed to the team and all of us. Sarthak's team remodeled itself to reach out to Divyangjans operating from home. Actually, with work from home being an accepted norm, one big opportunity came for the Divyangjans who could now be productive from the safe confines from their home itself. It became a great leveler from them since they could work and serve corporates in job roles which were ideally suited to them. I got calls from senior HR people who started thinking in terms of why a Divyangjan can't do a particular job from home. Why should a person without disability be chosen to do that job. So a little bit of restructuring has already started happening. Sarthak is immensely grateful to corporate donors and employers like you all. Sarthak is just a tool, very frankly, to empower Divyangjans. If there hadn't been a donor through CSR or philanthropy or an employer at the end of the value chain, then what good the training would be. So let's hear some of our trainees who have benefited from this value chain.
Hello friends, my name is Kiran Kehlon. I'm working at Trident Group of Industries, Barnala. I want to thank Sarthak Educational Trust for helping me to get a job.
నేను ఒక విజువల్ ఇంపేర్డ్ పర్సన్. నేను ప్రెజెంట్ కాగ్నిజెంట్ అనే కంపెనీలో ప్రాసెస్ ఎగ్జిక్యూటివ్గా వర్క్ చేస్తున్నాను.
নমস্কার, আমার নাম যমুনা সাউ আছে। আমি কলকাতাতে থাকি। আমি এখন লয়েড ইন্ডিয়া গ্রুপে এজ এ টেলিকলার কাজ করছি।
हेलो, गुड मॉर्निंग। मेरा नाम गौरव कुमार है और मैं होटल पार्क प्लाजा में जॉब करता हूँ।
Hello everyone, my name is Gaurav Banerjee. My disability is 50%. Recently I got selected in Cognizant.
हेलो एवरीवन, मेरा नाम खुशबू है। मैं बिग बास्केट में काम करती हूँ। थैंक यू।
Hello, I am Archana Robert Wesley. I am orthopedic handicap. I recently got a job in Prakriti Travels.
मेरा नाम सैयद मोहम्मद है और मुझे PwD है। मैं एज ए एसोसिएट विप्रो में काम कर रहा हूँ।
मेरा नाम सागर है। मैं विवादित आश्रय में आता है, सार्थक से जुड़ा और मुझे जॉब प्रोवाइड कराई विशाल मेगा मार्ट में।
मेरा नाम शांति है। आज मैं बहुत अच्छी जॉब कर रही हूँ फ्लिपकार्ट में एज अ शॉर्टर की।
मेरे बच्चे का नाम योगेश झा है। वो उसको मानसिक समस्या है और वो सार्थक से ओटी, स्पीच थेरेपी और स्पेशल एजुकेशन लेता है।
नमस्ते, मैं दिव्यांशी की मम्मी। मेरी बच्ची को सुनने की दिक्कत थी। आर्थिक में थेरेपी लेना शुरू कर दी हमने और धीरे धीरे इसके अंदर इम्प्रूवमेंट आता गया।
मैं रजनीश अग्रवाल डिसेबिलिटी से ग्रसित हूँ और सार्थक से मैं नेशनल ओलंपिक्स एसोसिएशन के माध्यम से जुड़ा हुआ हूँ। मैंने विगत वर्षों में भारत का रिप्रेजेंटेशन इंटरनेशनल इवेंट्स में कंप्यूटर विधाओं में किया है और पुरस्कार भी जीते हैं।
So today we have an eminent panel of experienced people from reputed corporates who are here to share their views and how they are contributing to the ecosystem where diversity and inclusive world can evolve for Divyangjans. I'll introduce each panelist as and when I pose a question to them. It will be easier for the audience to understand the fabulous work and the context from where they're coming from. So let me start. Mr. Nitesh Ranjan. Mr. Nitesh Ranjan is the Executive Director of Union Bank of India since March 2021, though he has been with the bank since 2008. He was the Chief General Manager for steering bank's vision and goals through strategic end-to-end digitization. He is a postgraduate in economics and has completed a leadership development program from Bangalore. He has dedicated 100 days for imparting spoken English program to underprivileged youth under Teach India initiative. So Mr. Ranjan, what steps Union Bank of India has taken to ensure diversity and inclusion at workplace? And how can your bank partner with NGOs for empowerment of PwDs? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatnagar, and good morning to all in one. Dear panel members, all the participants, and I think hundreds of others who are joining live on the Facebook. Good morning once again to each one of you. First of all, I would like to pay my special gratitude to Mr. Jitendra Agrawal, with whom I had my first interaction just a few months ago. And I was very impressed with the the work that he described that the Sarthak is doing. I'm very happy that he has invited me from Union Bank of India to be part of this panel and share some perspectives on the disability and the inclusion and diversity steps that bank is taking. So thank you, Dr. Agrawal. My compliments to the entire Sarthak team on its foundation day. I think this is not only a celebration of the 13th anniversary, but it is also a celebration for their efforts towards the empowerment of persons with disability, Divyangjans, and building an inclusive ecosystem for them. Sarthak has done a commendable work, as Madam Anuradha was telling in the beginning, and Mr. Bhatnagar also explained through the video. And I'm sure that going forward, much more is to come. And a special compliments to Dr. Agrawal for the initiative that he has taken with the support of the government of Haryana for setting up the Global Resource Center. I'm sure that this is going to be a very, very path-breaking initiative for all the NGOs and organizations in the areas of creating empowerment and awareness for the persons with disabilities. I think in Union Bank of India, we are one of the largest bank of the country today, and we have presence across the country with our branches in every nook and corner of the country. And therefore, it's very important that we follow the principle of equal opportunity at the workplace and promote this through the multiple initiatives. You'll be happy to note that, in fact, we work with more than 2,500 persons with disabilities. And almost 1/4 of them are the female staff members. And I can tell you that some of the best people I know in the bank actually belong to this segment. Diversity and inclusion is a part of our HR vision. Our belief is that diversity and inclusiveness are very critical for any organization. This brings more trust and commitment. If we look at any leading global companies, we see that those companies who have promoted diversity and inclusion, they have experienced exceptional performance over the long period of time. Because the diversity promotes creativity, creative thinking, and empathy, which are, I think, are very essential for any consumer-focused company, including banks. Therefore, diversity and inclusion for us, particularly for the persons with disabilities, is not only a cause, but is a business case. While pursuing the equal opportunity principle, I would say that there is also a need for positive discrimination that we in the bank follow for the Divyang colleagues. I would actually describe how we promote and adopt the diversity and inclusion for the persons with disabilities with a 3D principle. First D is define. It is very important for any organization, and a large organization like us who work with almost 2,500 persons with disabilities, that you define your approach, define the governing principles, and set the right kind of policies. Second D, I would say, is the demonstrate. So having a policy, having approach and principle is one thing, but actually putting that into practice is something different. So second D for is to demonstrate. That's how we have the policies are getting converted into actions. And third D is develop, where I said that positive discrimination. I think in line with the policy and actions taken, we have also to invest in training, growth, and empowerment of persons with disabilities. So like if I give some of the examples of how do we actually practice it, for our staff members, we have the audiobook, the DAISY audiobook, we have books in Braille. We use a lot of assistive technology at workplace, like screen readers, video magnifiers. And similarly, we have special training modules for our Divyang colleagues. We have identified job roles for them where they are doing very good, in fact. And we also practice a policy of preferred place of posting for our Divyang colleagues. I would also say that besides our employees, we are also cognizant that large number of our customers belong to Divyang category. Therefore, several steps bank is continuously taking to help them avail the banking services with ease and convenience. For example, sometime few years ago, Union Bank of India was the first bank actually to launch the talking ATMs. And this was accessible to Divyang colleagues. And today we have more than 5,000 talking ATMs in the country. And I'm happy to share that, in fact, the Indian Banks Association, which is the umbrella association for banks in India, that adopted our talking ATM as a model ATM. And then that was actually practiced and adopted by other banks. Similarly, we are using our doorstep banking services, which has recently started, where our agents and employees are reaching out to the doorstep of the customers to provide them certain basic services. I'm sure that this also will help our Divyang colleagues, persons with disabilities, to avail the banking services with much ease. And the third aspect, I would say, everything we cannot do on our own. So we also actively participate in supporting the organizations and NGO in the areas of care and development for Divyangs. I would say that whatever we are doing at the bank is a work in progress. There is much to do for us in terms of positive discrimination and actually demonstrating that we are taking care of the Divyangs, empowering them. And I can tell you that my experience working with a few of the Divyang colleagues is that they are very, very capable, much more capable than many of us, given they are, given right kind of training, right kind of work responsibility. And I'm sure as a bank and as a nation, as a society, we'll continue to take multiple initiatives like the Sarthak is taking to empower our Divyang persons and the persons with disabilities.
Thank you, Mr. Ranjan. I think I'm very impressed with what I hear from you. A lot of takeaways. 2,500 people in UBI. That's a great statistic to have. I hope it doubles itself in the next 1 year, because the reason being, when there were 7 disabilities defined by the government of India, which was around 1.5 years back or so, there were 2.5 crore Divyangjans in India. Now, there are 14 more disabilities have been added to the 7 before. So there are 21 disabilities now. And the population of Divyangjans has gone above 8 to 9 crores now. So it's a very big population through which we would like to draw our own talent to serve whichever form of corporate you're in. I'm very happy to hear you say about the exceptional performance by adopting D&I chapter and making the business case and positive discrimination, the 3D principle of define, demonstrate, and develop. I'll remember that. That's a very nice model to have. And audiobooks, the first talking bank, doorstep banking, and your active support to NGOs. So thank you very much. And I will get in touch with you when there are more questions coming in to hear more about them. But thanks a lot, Mr. Ranjan. And now I come to the technology enabler now, because technology is now seen as more important than anything else, really, because we are all sitting from home, and today we are talking of technology. I keep hearing of organizations saying unless you are becoming technically savvy, there may not be much space for them to work. So a lot of people are now adopting technology as a ways and means of their normal life. And what better way to incorporate Microsoft into this? So I come to GeethalakshmiG of Microsoft. And GeethalakshmiG works the senior product manager of Microsoft, who also volunteers as an IDC CSR lead for diversity and inclusion. Microsoft supports many organizations to promote diversity. Geeta is passionate about women empowerment, especially those who want to get back to active working after a break. She coaches class 10th and 12th students also. Geeta is a college topper from University of Madras and has done an executive program in business management from IIM Calcutta. So Geeta, please elaborate on AI for Accessibility, which is a Microsoft program committed to empowering people with disabilities. Over to you.
Thanks, Atul. Good morning, everyone. Greeting to all co-panelists who are part of CSR from their respective organizations, and doing a great cause for the society. Thanks to Sarthak Educational Trust for this wonderful opportunity provided to Microsoft to be part of this wonderful celebrations as a part of their great milestone. Congratulations to the entire Sarthak team for completing 13 years, and I wish many, many more such years to create greater impact and touch the lives of the people with disabilities. My pronouns to Dr. Jitendra and the entire team. You are creating the life of people truly. Kudos and bravo. With this note, I just wanted to start here representing the Microsoft. I'm going to separate into 3 talks. The first point I'm going to mention about how do we enable, how Microsoft is enabling its AI-based technology to be disability and inclusive. The second one is about the CSR initiatives for D&I. The third is how do we empower the people, organizations around the country and also worldwide to contribute towards the area of disabilities. So let's first get into how Microsoft is enabling its AI-based technology to be in disability inclusive, right? The lack of machine learning data sets that include people with disabilities has proved to be a major roadblock for developing technological solutions customized to their needs. This is often referred to as data desert. So it is a common practice for organizations building data technology products and services to use data at an aggregate level, which leads to stereotyping and being exclusionary in the process. So Microsoft revealed in its roadmap to deal with this data desert, which has become the major hindrance in making artificial intelligence accessible to the people with disabilities. And Microsoft has also had its various collaborations to shrink this data desert, as discussed. There are a few examples I would like to quote. So there is a project called Seeing AI app. So this Microsoft introduced this particular app, which is specifically for visually impaired people, using the device camera to identify people and objects and then describe them audibly. In the same lines, there is another software called as Orbit, Object Recognition for Blind Image Training, which was recently launched by City University of London, which is a Microsoft AI for Accessibility grantee. This is again for people with visually disabilities. So Microsoft India is also hosting accessibility summits, which is empowering the inclusion every year, starting 2012-13. And this summit is a platform that brings everyone together, the multiple stakeholders, to spark a dialogue on inclusive technology, evangelize the accessibility standards, and highlight inclusive technology solutions, as well as the policy role in creating an accessible India. That's our clear motto. And this includes people with disabilities, their support system, developers of assistance technologies, policymakers, CSR professionals, and service providers. And also the summit provides an ideal platform to bring together policymakers, influencers, to understand the policy environment and to chart a direction for making life experiences and opportunity accessible to everyone. From last year, right, we had a major focus on AI and cloud technologies, which can play in bringing people of all abilities into the mainstream. We believe that there are no limits to what people can achieve when technology reflects the diversity of everyone who uses it. Cloud and AI solutions are opening up the world possibilities, empowering people with disabilities with tools that support independence and productivity, inclusive programs. We also have a great initiative, which is called as Microsoft and AI for Accessibility. So this is a 5-year plus program, which includes $25 million program that harnesses the power of AI to amplify the human capability for more than 1 billion people around the world with a disability. Now, AI is now capable of seeing, hearing, and reasoning with increased accuracy, which is more important for the people to be like a normal people. The real-time speech-to-text transcription, computer vision capabilities, and predictive text functionalities are just a few examples of how AI to people with disabilities today. And AI for Accessibility aims to accelerate the development of accessible and intelligent AI solutions that build on recent advancement in Microsoft Cognitive Services to help developers create intelligent apps that see, hear, and understand and better interpret the people's needs. No, how do we deliver these things, but how do we inspire? How do we partner to achieve more in this area? Well, what we have done in terms of nationwide initiatives specific to India is Accessible India campaign in partnership with Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. We have come with the Innovate for Accessible India. This is a nationwide innovation challenge aimed at empowering people with disabilities with technology and tools required for better integration in the society and access to equal opportunities. The campaign has invited applications from students, citizens, and social impact organizations like Sarthak as well to build customized solutions that address challenges faced by people with disabilities across the 21 officially recognized disabilities. The key areas of focus the developers were encouraged to address includes mobility, e-governance and access, education, skiing, and livelihood and health. So with over 1 billion of people around the world living with some form of disabilities, it is critical that we find a way to use these technologies to everyone enable participate at the fullest in the socio-economic environment around us. This is an amazing opportunity to bring new ideas for building an inclusive future. Using this power of Microsoft Cloud, artificial intelligence, and other new technologies, developers were able to create products and solutions in the area of many things to create a greater accessibility for the people with disabilities. The best 10 solutions that address the key challenges faced by people with disabilities was provided mentoring support from Microsoft to deliver the product at the best in the market along with NASCOM foundations. And we are doing this at scale because scalability is very important. And also early this year, Microsoft announced new 5-year plan to help bridge the disability divide for over 1 billion people living with disabilities. The various initiatives aims to make technology more accessible for disabled people, increase the skill education, and make the workplace more inclusive for everyone. On the technology front, Microsoft is committed to make its product accessible by design. Every product in Microsoft goes through this accessibility testing. In the same context, Microsoft CSR is also supporting D&I initiatives. We especially have this D&I wing. We ensure that the majority of the share goes to the D&I wing. And this year we're also handshaking with Sarthak. Happy to be part of this program called Sarthak GEET program for persons with disability, and looking forward to have more such collaborations with Sarthak in the area of disabilities. The motto is not just to deliver technology to enable disabilities, but to empower, motivate everyone to deliver technologies to achieve more. As our CEO and Chairman Satya says, mission is to empower every person, every organization, everybody in the planet to achieve more. And thanks for this wonderful opportunity. Over to you, Mr. Atul.
Thank you, Geeta. That was a pretty elaborate description of what Microsoft's doing, and very happy to hear that. And I think we will get back to you to elaborate more and how we can get this message across to our Divyangjans about object visually disabled software that you talked about, and how do you want to shrink the data desert. I think that is very critical with the number of AI, ML, and deep learning and all kinds of startups coming up. But the kind of data set they're working on kind of excludes the Divyangjans, so that's where the data desert, I think we need to make that data desert into an oasis, really. Now, focus on AI and cloud tech. That's something very important. And what particularly interests me is your voice to text and text back to voice. I think that is very critical in a place like India because, let's for a moment leave aside the Divyangjan bit and just say, look, 50% or more than 50% of our people are still, let's say, don't know how to read or write to an extent that they're effective communication, but they know how to speak, they know how to communicate. What has happened with the mobile phone and the smartphone reaching every nook and corner, India being the largest, let's say, users of mobile phones, let's say, they know how to communicate. I mean, for instance, my cook doesn't know how to read or write, but he can tell me what is to be made or what is missing in the house and we need to bring. He sent me a voice note on WhatsApp. So I said, wow, this is great. You know, I really felt, and if I want a particular dish to be made by him, I send him a YouTube video. So there's an important communication going on. Now, voice back to text, and this, I think what is critical and challenging for India is we got these 29 different states and multiple languages. So even if you don't go for 29 languages, but let's say some very prominent languages, can the, the speaker, the user of the phone speak, let's say in Telugu, in the background, whatever research, whatever kind of looking around for information happens in English, because most of the databases are maintained in English. And then again, the text comes back as voice and people can then talk about whatever information the person needs. That's real empowerment for me. I keep saying that, can my maid who wants to learn maybe Oriental cooking, prawns and chow means, etc., and she makes the typical Indian fare for which she gets 3,000-4,000 rupees. But if she knows, if she can make all this Oriental fare, suddenly her value will increase into 10 to 15,000 rupees as a cook. Now, how does she empower herself to learn more? So she will speak into a phone in her native language and get to learn how to cook a particular dish in a voice back to text back to voice kind of stuff. So that'll be very exciting. I just thought I'd leave it as a point to you. If that's coming up, it'll be great to, and the same thing can apply to our Divyangjans, most of them, and with the visually impaired and or maybe the hearing impaired can have a different way of learning. So thanks for that, and thanks for letting us know that you are going to be participating in Sarthak's GEET program. And we'll get back to you when there are some questions. So next, I'd like to introduce Ashish Gupta. He's the Managing Director and Head of Equity Research and Asia Financials Research for Credit Suisse. He's also Chair of India's Philanthropy Committee. He and his team are consistently rated in journals like Asia Money, Institutional Investor. He's also served on the board of SIDBI and holds a master's degree in management from the Mumbai University and also a CFA charter holder. Now, Ashish, how is Credit Suisse empowering people in rural India, and what plans does the bank have to promote diversity inclusion in the workplace? Over to you.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Atulji, for having me, and a big congratulations to the entire Sarthak team and community for this milestone, and I wish them continued success going forward. We at Credit Suisse are ourselves very privileged to be associated with the Sarthak program for the last few years. So Credit Suisse supports inclusion in multiple ways. It promotes inclusion and diversity within the organization. But in India, through our CSR initiatives, we have actually been focusing particularly on inclusion of people with disability. The three main pillars of our support program currently, of course, one is the support of Sarthak, through which we aim to impact about 1,500 young people with disability to find jobs. We are supporting Sarthak's Thane Center in Mumbai, and also their efforts pan-India. In addition, we are supporting the Cochlear Preschool project for the last 4 years, where underprivileged deaf-born children are trained and finally integrated into regular schools by the age of 7 years. I'm glad to report that in the last 4 years, we have been able to support education of 360 children, out of which 80 have already been integrated into regular schools. In this initiative, we also train mothers and teachers, and through those efforts, we have indirectly impacted about 5,000 individuals. We are now committed to support refurbishment and repairs of a 4-floor building that has been allotted to Cochlear by the Pune Municipal Corporation. The other project that we have been supporting for the last few years is the Jai Vakil Foundation. They work in providing holistic services to children and adults with intellectual disability. Credit Suisse supports foundations initiatives to provide free and special education to differently enabled children, as well as diagnosis and therapies, including nutrition, medicines. While this program primarily runs off a center in Sivri in Mumbai, they have now out camps in rural Maharashtra, which are also supported by Credit Suisse. We are actually very happy that this foundation has now migrated and transformed into not just supporting individuals directly at their centers, but developing curriculums that have now been in partnership with Maharashtra state government, being rolled out across multiple educational institutions for differently enabled. In terms of rural initiatives, we have a program that runs in 5 states like Rajasthan, Odisha, Andhra Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur, where women are trained in enterprises like beekeeping, coffee processing, and even solar panel installation. We are working with the state government in Maharashtra for providing educational support and transformation of schools in some of the most backward districts of Maharashtra, like Gadchiroli. We have programs in Jharkhand where in association with the Pan IIT Foundation, we are supporting training and placement of underprivileged youth. So net, I will like to say that inclusion is a big focus, both in our CSR initiatives as well as in terms of our organizational goals. And we hope to continue to make further progress on these.
Thank you, Ashish. I'm very happy to hear about your bank taking the initiatives for especially children, the deaf-born children. You mentioned 360 children were taken in, and 80 have already got into regular schools, and you're training mothers and children at the same time. Now that is another very big aspect of Divyangjans that we should not take our eyes off. If disabilities are recognized and diagnosed pretty early on, when I say pretty early on, between 0 to 5 years, then there's a good chance that any further deterioration may be arrested. And there's even a better chance that that disability might even get cured. However, in our country, somehow the parents somehow feel that, well, the disability will get over. And they don't seek help from interventionists or counselors. And in that respect, Sarthak is running in an early intervention center. There are 2 early intervention centers. And you've got therapists, you've got psychologists who generally get into one-to-one engagement with the children and try and bring that disability to, let's say, a stop to the extent possible. And some miraculous stories have come out from there. And it's very important, and this is a message I'd like to share with everyone who's watching the show, and this message should be transmitted to all people, really. That's very important to get your child, let's say, diagnosed very, very early on. In case there's a disability, there's a good chance that it may get remediated. However, first thing is to recognize it. First thing is to diagnose. So when a child is born and is in the hospital, or he's just been maybe coming out of hospital, it's nice to have that test done. And if that can be done, then a lot of things will be sorted out for the child. And later on, I think the child is going to thank you a lot for this. So thanks, Ashish. And I also heard about your the rural enterprises of women being trained in coffee processing, beekeeping, solar panel installations. I'm happy to hear about the Pan IIT Alumni Foundation. I'm part of it. I'm a consultant sailor of the Pan IIT Foundation. And yeah, I know Jharkhand is one major success story which I'd like to replicate across other states also. Thanks for that. Now, I now come to Mr. Ritesh Sinha. He's currently head of CSR projects at HDFC Bank Limited. He is an EPM alumni of Columbia Business School and a Swedish Institute scholar. He holds 2 decades of experience and has diverse expertise across the fields of corporate sustainability, corporate communication, social business development, brand development. While practicing CSR, he has particularly been interested in developing self-sustainable models in areas of healthcare, sanitation, gender mobilization, environment. Presently, with the HDFC Bank, he's engaged in creating a significant imprint across the country's sustainable development through holistic as well as focused development interventions in alignment with the UN SDGs in multiple geographies. So Ritesh is a member of advisory boards and governing bodies of various NGOs and educational institutions. He holds a postgraduate degree in rural development from the Xavier Institute of Social Sciences, Ranchi. So Ritesh, how is HDFC Bank under the program Parivartan, a step towards progress, addressing the needs of the underprivileged and people with disabilities, and aligning with the goals of Sustainable Development Goals, that is SDGs, for 2030? Eager to know. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me here. And I stand in for Nusrat, who is the head of CSR, who should have been here, but because of ill health, she has not been able to join today. Very happy to be part of the panel. I remember meeting Dr. Agarwal about a decade back in 2010-11, and I have very vivid memories of the grooming and styling training program that had started then, and we were able to contribute. And it's a long journey since then. And congratulations to the entire team, specifically Dr. Agarwal. And it's kind of a movement that took shape, that started from there. A lot of people continued to join. So congratulations to all of you. Now, moving to your question, sir, I would like to talk about that in 2 parts. One is what the bank is doing from a business side, as well as what are we doing under CSR. So I'm sure all of you would know that RBI came up with parameters to make and accessibility standards for banks, and so all banks are supposed to come. Still work in progress, but largely would include things like EVM chip for or visually impaired customers and mobility related issues. I want to start by saying that hiring is not charity. So one should never look at hiring the differently abled people with that lens. It's absolute competition, and they do equally well, if not better. So therefore, that is a notion that needs to be removed from the minds of these people. This is And therefore, uncovering unconscious biases, we of course have an internal campaign where we talk about intentional inclusion. It's not, I mean, it doesn't end at hiring. Beyond hiring, how the person is integrated into the entire system, work with colleagues is something which is very important. So we run this program internally. So yes, so of course it makes absolute business sense for people to hire differently abled people. Never look at it from the charity perspective. Moving on to the aspect of what we do under Parivartan. So Parivartan is the flagship program for us, which drives both the CSR as well as the ESG, the environment, social governance agenda for the bank. And some of you would know that about a month back, HDFC Bank has declared to be a carbon neutral company by 2031-32. And on ESG framework, we have also made some commitments across inclusive workplace and so on. So we have a target of having 25% of our workforce focusing on diversity and inclusion. So that is on ESG piece. As far as the Parivartan in other parts of the country is concerned, so we are present in all the states of the country in terms of having our development projects. As sir, you highlighted that we have two types of projects. One is called the Holistic Rural Development Project. The other is Focused Development Project. And we have defined 7 goals for ourselves. Now, these goals are aligned with the UN SDGs, and these largely revolve around improvement in income level of farmers, skill training of unemployed and differently abled youths, improving irrigation coverage, promoting chemical-free farming, improving sanitation facilities. So some of the typical projects I would, or maybe the targets I would like to highlight. So we want to increase income of 500,000 farmers in next 4 years. We want to train about, again, 1 lakh youths and unemployed youths and women, again, in the next 4 years. So we have set out these targets. We want to, have 5 lakh acres to be covered under irrigation, 5 lakh acres to be covered under chemical-free farming. So these are interventions that we have undertaken around these goals. A focus project focuses on one specific goal, and then it is taken at a large scale at multi-region, multi-state level. HRDP, or the Holistic Rural Development Project, works in a cluster of villages, treats that as a unit, and then try to look at these goals while also simultaneously looking at the needs there. All these things are locally contextualized, and accordingly, the entire planning is done. Till date, we have reached out to about 2,000 villages. As far as HRDP is concerned, we have about 5 lakh households that has benefited through our interventions. We also run a very significant education program. So there are we have a scholarship scheme which is of course live now on Buddy for Study platform. So I am also using this platform if anybody wants to spread the word. Till 31st of October, we are live for a COVID-related scholarship for children who are at the risk of dropping out. They should try and apply there. So we have a dedicated corpus for this scholarship, as well as other crisis-related scholarship, which is, I think, live for 1 more week. And now we also have targets on improving learning level outcomes. So we are partnering, having a tripartite arrangement, working with state governments and making commitments on learning level outcomes, setting up project management units at state level through our partners. So these are sort of, kind of large level or multi-state level goals that we have kept for ourselves. Moving on to the persons with disabilities, we of course very recently started 2 centers with Sarthak. One I think is in Kerala and one in Uttar Pradesh. And many more to come. I think we have committed about 500 people to be trained through these centers initially, I think the first year. and then we will sort of grow from there. We are very much committed to have a very inclusive society, not only as far as the hiring and other things are concerned, but also moving from there, looking at setting up more centers like these, and then make it a movement and be part of this movement actually.
Thank you, Ritesh. I'm very happy to hear your work that you're doing for achieving Sustainable Development Goals, SDG. That's a country level commitment you are picking up and taking forward. And I know how important is it for India to achieve them by 2030. So this is something good for everyone on the table out here. Then the holistic rural development, HRGP, you have to reach out to 2,000 villages, focus projects, and the 7 goals for them for being achieved. Wow, that's a great thing to happen. And thank you for supporting the centers in Sarthak, and we hope that you will take up more such initiatives for people with disabilities. The only thing that I wanted to add there was in your CSR budget, we keep requesting that if there is a certain allocation made for PwDs, then it becomes easier to implement projects rather than just take a CSR as a whole and you take it to the board, and every time you have to kind of come back and say, look, the budget is X, but some part of X will be taken for people with disabilities. If right at the beginning the allocation is made such, then it becomes easier for people like you to take the project forward with speed. Otherwise, it gets into a bit of a approval process. So this has been our experience with many other corporates, and we have been advising and we've been requesting them that if you are doing this work, then try and classify it right up front. So when the board approves the agenda for CSR in a particular financial year, it becomes easier to then find projects to do. Thank you very much, Ritesh. And now I come to Dr. Archana Singh from National Skill Development Corporation. She is responsible for Affirmative Action CSR Industry Partnership at NSDC. She is a development professional focusing on public policy, fundraising, impact, investment, government affairs, sustainability, and D&I. She has led national level schemes and initiatives like PMKVY, Skill Sathi, Samsung Dost. She graduated from Loyola College, Kolkata, and has a PhD in disability studies along with certifications from INSEAD and Howard. She's a trained art therapist and has worked with Fortish Medical Research, Skill Council of Persons with Disability, and Learning Link Foundation, amongst others. So Archana, after hearing all the speakers, what can you say about NSDC's CSR approach to empower the lives of persons with disability? And NSDC being a central point in skill development and a very effective, let's say, parent to Sarthak, what more can be done together? Over to you.
Thanks, Atul sir. Let me begin by saying that I'm very fortunate to take forward the baton of the foundation that you laid many years ago at NSDC. So thank you for that. And thank you, Nazmeen. I've been watching you for the past 1 hour. You've been, consistently doing your sign language. So thank you to you. And I'd like to congratulate Sarthak on its 13th anniversary. Very proud to be here. And a big hello to all the panelists. Let me tell you that I have learned a lot from all that you have said. I would begin by talking about my personal journey of how I got associated with disability in the first place. I have a son who's about 19 years old now, and he was diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder when he was in grade 2 or 3. And as a parent, I have gone through several challenges through his school days, especially, so much so that I was told by one of the very reputed schools in Delhi that I should take my child out of school in grade 10 because his ADHD was construed as him being a troublemaker. So I had to do that because I was forced to take him out of grade 10. I'd take him out of school at that point and, start a National Indian Open School for him. And luckily, he had a skill of playing golf like his father. I'm married to a golf professional, a sportsman. So he pursued that. And if you see these trophies behind, they belong to him. So yes, that's where my journey began, with skill development and disability. And that's what kind of encouraged me to do my PhD. And I'd like to thank Dr. Agarwal over here for his assistance in my journey in motherhood. He's really helped me through some very challenging and painful days of motherhood. So thank you, Dr. Agarwal, for that. Okay, now we come to NSDC from my personal journey. Thank you, Atul sir, for encapsulating my profile so beautifully. So when I handled PMKVY, which is the flagship scheme of NSDC, it was we made guidelines where the people with disability who are going to get trained would get special incentives based on the common norms, which is a Gazette notification of the Government of India. The Skill Council for Persons with Disability has also been set up, and that is an enabler which cuts across horizontally across 35 other sector skill councils. So what do I mean when I say this, that, this SCPWD, or Skill Council for Persons with Disability, cuts across different 35 sectors? I mean that this sector skill council is an enabler which assists trainers to train in the domain skills that they impart to persons with disabilities through tools which are called expositories. Now, if there are 6 expositories that have been made by the Skill Council for Persons with Disability for different people with disability. They are for people with visual impairment, people with hearing impairment, locomotor disability, intellectual disability, autism, and low vision. And if I were to talk about stats, there are about, let me just take a look, 130 qualification packs which have such expositories attached to them. And we've got 454 training centers for persons with disabilities. And we've trained more than about 2 lakh people in PMKVY, 2 lakh persons with disability in PMKVY. Then we've got placements of about 20,000 people. Doesn't look very, very promising, but yes, it's a start. So this is about stats at NSDC. Now I'll come to what I do at NSDC. So currently I am handling the CSR and Affirmative action vertical at NSDC. And we are looking at a focused approach for corporates in the private sector and the public sector units to commit their CSR funds to NSDC for implementing projects for persons with disability. And what we're also doing in our approach is incentivizing placement opportunities for persons with disability by saying that, okay, the salaries for persons with disability would be X percentage higher as opposed to the other people who are the non-disabled category. Then we've got incentives of toolkits, we've got incentives of travel allowance, etc., etc. So we are incentivizing the training for persons with disabilities so that not only do the training partners get encouraged to mobilize persons with disability, but also people with disability come forward for receiving the training that the CSR vertical would have to offer. So far, these are the few interventions that we brought about for affirmative action taking off at NSDC through the CSR vertical. So any questions? Happy to take, Atul sir. And anybody else.
Thank you, Archana. I could feel the passion as a mother, as a proud mother, and outlining the the way ahead for people with disabilities. Good luck to your son. I think with you as the mother behind, he's going to do well, and we're going to hear more about him. PMKVY, 130 QPs, 454 training centers, 2 lakh people. Now, Archana, I didn't know about this. So I think you need to publicize this more. This has to go viral. Let's talk about viral. That's the current way of communicating. So I think a lot more people need to understand what NSDC is doing, what kind of achievements have already happened, what kind of allowances that you mentioned under the PMKVY scheme. We need to publicize that more, and we'd be happy to partner in that. And of course, there are so many corporates today out here who would also like to take that forward. Thank you very much. Now I can see Rajashree is here, Natarajan. Rajashree Natarajan is the CEO of Cognizant Foundation, and it's an industry veteran and a social impact leader for nearly 30 years of global experience. She plays a key role in evolving an overarching charter for the foundation, defining CSR strategy and goals, managing operations, communication, and relationship with a broad set of diverse stakeholders. She's passionate about spending time with nonprofit organizations and social enterprises. She's the managing trustee of a charitable trust and a co-founder for bilingual reading and learning program that caters to the underprivileged children. Rajashree obtained her master's degree in electrical engineering from IIT Kharagpur. So Rajashree, how is the Cognizant Foundation creating an impact on the entire life cycle of people with disabilities? And what's the success so far, and what are the future plans for scaling up this noble work within and outside the organization? Over to you.
Thanks, Atul. And again, thanks, Bhavna, for kind of for the timely sharing the link for my mobile joining. I had a power cut, so still struggling to get my laptop up. And thanks, Atul, and it's been like wonderful listening to NSDC. I missed the previous ones, so I'm very keen to go back and listen to the others as well in the later recordings. It's been inspiring actually to be in this forum that where we listen about each other's story, because that kind of reiterates our commitment to this sector and as well specifically for this focus area. When it comes to Cognizant Foundation, we always had a sectoral focus of education, healthcare, and livelihood. Those are the three that we were working. But within that, if you take education or if you take healthcare, we had always been focusing specifically for an inclusive society. So if you take healthcare, we start with working for PwDs by preventing the disability. I mean, it's very, if you take, for example, of a visual impairment and blindness, it's actually India seems to have a very dubious record of close to about 1/3 of that 39 million or whatever it is of the blind people being in India. And the saddest part is about 80% of that is actually avoidable. In that sense, they don't have to be complained or they don't have to become visually impaired. Just that all that we require is a timely intervention. So one of our flagship programs within healthcare is actually preventing avoidable blindness. I mean, that's actually a thematic focus. Under that we have very narrowed down and a sharpened focused flagship program, like retinopathy of prematurity, where for underweight babies, when they're born premature, the retina gets detached. And just within the first 6 weeks, if they are administered a laser injection, and of course with a couple of follow-up treatment, they don't have to go blind. So it's that simple, but then the access and as well as the awareness is very pathetic. And that is something that we've been working with a lot of healthcare providers, be it an LVPI or a Mission for Vision or an Arvind. We work across districts, across states, in actually reducing or the blindness or avoiding the blindness in the first place. The next is actually vision impairment. Most of the school children, there's always saying that the learning outcome is bad or people are not able to read. But first thing that we need to check is whether they are not able to read from the last row or the first row, what it is like. So a lot of schools vision impairment screening for school children. We've launched it along with Mission for Vision with HV Desai, or community screening with Dr. Shroff Hospital in the Delhi area and so on. So this is the second set that we do for vision. And of course, the third is we also work for avoidable blindness from an elderly population standpoint by setting up vision centers in remote areas. Particularly, they don't have access. And if they have to come into the tertiary or a secondary centers, it's quite a far distance. And many of them actually leave out their job, or drop out of their active, their livelihood is lost when they're kind of vision impaired. So that is something that we try to provide interventions by setting up the vision centers. So these are what the activities that we do in healthcare. And of course, we also work with women and child health. That again, we believe, we kind of understand that many of these disabilities also because actually babies are getting born premature. And that is actually linked with women health, actually the adolescent health and the prenatal health of women and so on. So even that, they're very committed to actually prevent disability. We're trying to work with programs like RBSK, trying to, whether we can do some early interventions, and the nutrition, particularly in the postnatal period, both for the mother and the children and so on. So these are some of the interventions that we try to do in women and child health. Then it comes to education, because it's not that we can work and come back, just look at the employability of persons with disability. If you look at majority of them, right, when they come to the college, if you take people with vision impairment, we need to work a lot on their confidence first, on the way in which they address. They look down, they don't even look up, because that's the way that the training for mobility or the training for personality development is not given early on. So we try to work. First, we started working with special schools. Actually, we started working with schools for hearing impaired, schools for vision impaired, schools for then we realized that that's not going to help. It needs to be more of an inclusive school setup. So now we're trying to actually work with certain schools where it can be an inclusive setup. We're also working with people like Tata Institute of Social Science, coming up with a framework for inclusive school and so on. So how to mainstream the children, right, early on. So that is on the education side. Of course, we do have focus on education, like scholarship for higher education, and as well as digital learning and STEM education is a focus area. But within that, even a scholarship, we have a special scholarship instituted along with Help the Blind Foundation for visually impaired across the country. And that scholarship doesn't come just with the scholarship for higher education. We also kind of do skilling, right, in the 3 years of studies, right from the first year. We provide skilling, which is employability skilling, mobility skilling, digital learning skilling, and as well as language communications. So all these are actually addressed on the top of the scholarship. We realize that again is not the solution, so we need to do more. So we partnered now with Enable India, actually developing the platform for actually the skilling it starts with visually impaired, but then it can also extend further and so on, where how to standardize. So there's a lot of capacity building that need to be done for the skilling. And we work with partners like Sarthak, thanks to Dr. Jitendra and people like that, the commitment. And so we work with partners with the Dr. Ritesh Foundation, and there are other people like Cheshire Disability Trust and so on. So where that we specifically focus there on skilling for employability. So it needs to be a life cycle, one from prevention, and then from early on, the early detection and because the early childhood plays a very, very critical role on how we can actually prevent some of these disability and as well as help the children adapt to the disability. So we work in those areas. And now we realize that actually it's the disability and the women focus all along, whether it's the education, skilling, a livelihood, or healthcare. Now we've actually, as part of this strategy, we've kind of flipping it and we said inclusion is our focus. So our primary focus is inclusion, which is basically working with persons with disabilities, one either from prevention, from early childhood education to an education, or nurturing them for higher education and then skilling them for employability. So that's the way, that the approach that we have taken. And of course, again, the focus for us is now was how can we leverage technology for all this? If you take healthcare, again, technology can play a big role, because earlier all the technology that we had to be imported. Any of these prevention technologies were very costly. So now we're trying to do a lot of indigenous technologies. We work with people like Trinetra, where even when it's setting up to vision centers, now it's like very affordable. The funders camera out kind of affordable. So we're working with technologies at that level. Then we're working with technology. We work with IIT Madras for actually, for particularly the babies who are getting discharged, the underweight babies who are getting discharged, they need to be monitored. So there is a IoT-enabled temperature monitoring with which that we work in government systems for at least 5 or 6 districts to ensure that these babies are not in the danger mode. They kind of get the timely intervention and so on. And we are also looking at the same when it comes to education and skilling. We're now trying to work for how can we bring technology there in bringing it up in a structure, because that's our core. That's our competency in a way from a Cognizant standpoint. So there is obviously an interest on how to put technology for good use and for social good. So that's the approach that we've taken, and thanks to our partners, we have really become, we understand this space because of our partners. And then with also a lot of knowledge partners, we work for research, trying to constantly look at how do we stitch this inclusion right from the early on, right from the diagnosis, detection, prevention, to early interventions for in a child's life and all along up to the employability. That's the way that we look at it, Atul.
Thank you, Rajashree. Very, very important topic that you have brought up. Before you had come on, I was talking about the early intervention centers that Sarthak has and the kind of miracles we kind of see there happen because early intervention's been done with a child. And I'm glad Cognizant Foundation is doing that. And we need to do more of it because it's not about only skill development and employment. It's also about, let's say, sorting out the disability very early on so that situation may not come later. Happy to hear about all the work that you're doing with people who are visually impaired. For other people, I'd just like to say Dr. Jitendra Agarwal himself is a visually impaired person. He lost his eyesight in 2004 due to a macular degeneration. And I would now say that his vision is better than mine. He's the CEO of Sarthak. 2008 he started. And the kind of vision that he puts out, I'm very impressed. And so there's a, let's say, a connect out here with the visually impaired people. And Dr. Agarwal is, let's say, a living role model for anybody who may have a difficulty with the eyes and eyesight, because there's a bigger vision to follow. You rightly said livelihood stops for visually impaired persons, but then after seeing Sarthak and after seeing Dr. Agarwal's career, there can be many other things that can be done. In NSDC, I remember this now way back in 7-8 years, maybe Archana might be able to elaborate on that, but there was something called an Eye Mitra we started where people could be given specs for just 200 rupees. I mean, there used to be a person who would be coming from a main town and have specs with the plus and the negative side of pre-made specs with powers of 1, 2, 3 and minus 1, 2, 3. And he would go out in the villages and he didn't have any formal eye testing equipment. So he would just put one spec, then the other one, Kaunsa chal lag raha hai types, one after the other. And suddenly one would strike it. And suddenly for the person who gets the specs, the world opens up. It's more colorful, it's clear. He never knew that the world was so clear. It was, the hazy world was what he or she was experiencing for years in life. And suddenly the world kind of opens up. So that was just a 200 rupee intervention. And because again, in the rural centers, we can't be, I mean, it will be a very distant dream to have an eye testing center in every single village. But in the meantime, we can do many interventions. And I'm happy to hear all the work that Cognizant Foundation is doing. So now I just want to come back with one question, which I'm told has been asked quite often. So I pose the question to every one of you to speak on. So due to the pandemic, CSR organizations have reduced their budget. And that has impacted NGOs big time. So being CSR leaders, how do you suggest NGOs to keep impacting underprivileged sections of society, especially with people with disabilities? So I'll start with Mr. Ranjan first. What would you like to comment on this? How can people, I mean, after all, at the end of it, it's all about funding. Noble intentions still require funding to come into some resultant action. Yeah, we can.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatnagar. I think CSR funding in the current year, actually, it has gone down a little bit. I can understand because some of the CSR funding recently is also going to COVID-related areas and the institutions who are taking steps into COVID. But I think this is a very temporary thing. There is a larger awareness among the companies and the corporates for contributing to the development of the society. So I'm sure that in the coming years, the funding for the CSR from the corporates like us will continue to be there, particularly in the areas of inclusion and diversity, health, sanitation, education. I think these are the core areas we are looking at. And I'm sure that there will be much more opportunities for the organizations, NGO to get funding into this area.
We have this government e-marketplace GEM system. In that, we have now got a separate landing page for Divyangjan entrepreneurs. And these are entrepreneurs who will be demanding very small kind of funding help, really. And this is business. This is not about CSR. Or, well, if it can be CSR, great. But the point we are trying to make here is, besides the skill development and all the training bit, we need to create more entrepreneurs. And some of the Divyangjans are very adept at making handicrafts or paintings or mementos. In fact, as a bank, I mean, when you have mementos to be sent during Diwali time or New Year's time, think of Divyangjan made stuff that is being given out. And with GEM coming in, we have already, in Sarthak, we have created, let's say, a platform by which we are getting other NGOs to participate and asking Divyangjan entrepreneurs to display their pieces. And we're talking of small numbers. We're not talking of hundreds and 200s also. We're talking of 5s and 10s, really. So something to start off with. So any government department, and there are many of them, I believe that platform has already done business of 1 lakh crore by March, so it would have gone up even further. So the government is trying to build in transparency in the procurement system, which was long needed. And a lot of good work is happening there. So that's something for the bank to consider, how it can empower with these small fundings itself, and how they themselves can market some of the, or rather send out mementos which are made by the Divyangjans. Because, you know, when you get a memento at the end of any webinar or any kind of conference that you've gone to, it usually doesn't last long. Whereas if you've made by a particular Divyangjan something very notable, then you tend to keep it. And I have kept it, and if I can show you, I will do that. In the meantime, can I ask this question now to the other banker on the panel, please? Ritesh.
I just pray that this is temporary. Of course, a lot of the funding has gone into COVID relief. For us, fortunately, that had not impacted our funding because you know, our profit margins also increased as compared to the last year. Last year, we were able to spend about 620 crores on CSR. And we had that had increased by about 100 crores over the previous year. And that is what we sort of allocated last year for COVID. So we were able to maintain the status quo. And even this year also, we have committed about 120 crores for COVID relief. But now the profits has also gone up by that much. So our projects are largely, we are able to maintain them, and we have not reduced the funding as such. But yes, the entire sector, there has been some impact. Banking has not been impacted that much by COVID, but other sectors, manufacturing and those industries, their portfolios have reduced. Sincerely hope and pray that this you know, goes away, and the fund kitty is now is again made available for taking up the work.
Thank you. You know, I was just mentioning, this is, if you can see, this is a Stephen Hawking memento made, and it was given by Sarthak at one of the foundation days in the past. I still have kept it. I get many more mementos, but they don't find a place in my home. But this is something that I just wanted to kind of display and keep in your mind as something that you need to support. And it will be a big thing if you can, because every Divyangjan entrepreneur is going to employ more. So that's the way, that is the now mantra with the Indian startup world, and what we're all trying to do at a, let's say at the country level, how we can have entrepreneurs develop more jobs, especially in the tier 2, tier 3 towns and maybe tier 4 towns, because that's where maybe the industry is not taking in more people, COVID and other impacts and cost reduction, etc. But in entrepreneurship is a way to go. Now, Archana, what would you like to say? How do you think CSR and how does this COVID impact on funding can be taken care of?
Yes, sir. So if you look at the market share of CSR spend last year, it was about 8,520 crores in the financial year 1920, which was spent under CSR for livelihood projects for persons with disability by 7,704 companies. So the market share looks like a large chunk. Now we at NSDC, we are coming up with innovative models as to how we can tap into this market share.
Now, what are those innovative models that we are coming out with for persons with disability particularly? What we've done is we've come out with thematic areas of how the organizations who are going to commit to CSR can increase their impact on ground. Because everybody here is looking at impact for CSR. Nobody is really looking at, giving money for charity. So the impact that we are creating again has been subdivided into what kind of impact. So if we talk about entrepreneurial India and how persons with disability could be rooted towards becoming entrepreneurs, we have collaborated with SIDBI and Hindustan Unilever. And SIDBI is giving a grant of rupees 20,000 rupees across 3 months for persons with disabilities to set up their entrepreneurship establishments. And they're also giving a grant, not a loan, mind you, of 5,000 rupees per candidate for 500 candidates as toolkits. So it's a pool of 25,000 rupees that is being given by SIDBI for people with disabilities who would like to become entrepreneurs. And who's funding the training for these people with disabilities? It is corporates like Hindustan Unilever, corporates like Samsung, etc. So we are bringing in these co-funding models where we can leverage the focus areas of different corporates, because all of them have different kind of alignments of what they would like to concentrate on. So we tap into that focus area and core area and then align the impact accordingly. So entrepreneurship was one. Another impact area that we've suggested to corporates, which is working very well, is an employer-led model. So what we've told the corporates is that you give us funds for CSR, for training persons with disability and the non-disabled, and we will train them and send them to your organizations for OJT, for on-the-job training. Allow them, give them an opportunity as apprentices for on the job training, and they were very happy to get them on board on their shop floors, and they're very happy to even provide a stipend to these people with disability and the non-disabled category of trainees who are taking on vocational skills. And then we tell them that if you like them, later on after your project is over, hire them. So that is feeding into their workforce. Number one, it is feeding into their impact. Number two, and it is, like a good piece of a good approach of funds being well utilized. So that is the second area of collaboration that we have pitched to corporates. Then the third area is how we can increase impact for increasing female labor force participation. And I am a very strong advocate of gender equality, so much so that people call me a feminist sometimes. I said, so be it, yeah, big deal. I mean, it doesn't matter. For so many years, the male gender has been the default gender. So if I'm being a feminist and concentrating on the female gender now for, whatever, a couple of so the years that I'm alive, for 80, 90 years, big deal, yeah. I mean, 2000 years down, the default has been male. So if I tell everybody over here, close your eyes and think of a doctor, or a genius, you'll think of a male. You won't think of a female, because that's the conditioning that we have. So, okay, coming back to the point that I was trying to make, okay, for female labor force participation. Rajashree, I know you're finding it really funny, but yeah, that's who I am. So thanks. So what I was saying is that increasing female labor force participation is also a mandate for our country, because as you know that the female labor force participation is increasingly decreasing. From 30%, now it's at a 23%, and God knows how much lower it's going to go. So that is an area also that we are focusing on for corporates and giving them solutions as to how they can bring persons with disability, female persons with disability, and females from the non-disabled sector in their workforce to increase the female labor force participation, how we can enable these females to get wage employment, etc. So there are several models, but I have shared the top 3 models, which are the employer-led model, which is increasing the female labor force participation model, and the third one was the entrepreneurship model. So these are the 3 pitch points that we make to corporates, and let me tell you, they are very, very happy with these models, and all the corporates over here who would like to commit their CSR funds, NSDC is right there. So reach out.
I'm saying yay. You talked about NSDC. That's close to my heart anyway. Thank you very much. Look, I would have liked to extend this conversation, but you know, we are running short on time, and I think I'd like to wrap up at this moment.